Okay, welcome back to EDFGC5810 I'm just going to attempt to multitask here. That's never a good thing. This is the second part of the recording, which is looking at analysis. So this is where we finished, and I'm assuming you've done this. Now we're moving on from collection to data analysis. I do like food analogies, partly because I like food, but also because I think it just makes, kind of takes the scariness of research away. Data collection is the equivalent of you going to the supermarket, thinking that you're going to cook a meal and you pick the ingredients for that meal. You're picking the raw ingredients for that meal. That's the data collection. You don't pick everything that comes across, you pick the things that you're going to cook for your meal. The other hand, data analysis is where you prepare that data. That's where you actually get, you prepare, you process the data in order to prepare a meal that's ready cooked. If you go to a restaurant, you're going to be very disappointed if someone gets you to cook your own meal. You're there to be served. It's the same thing, that if you're reading someone's research, you're expecting to be served an analysis, and you're expecting that it's explained how that analysis was prepared or that meal was prepared, but that is what you're doing. So essentially it's like a recipe where you're talking about how you're going to analyze data, because you're actually explaining how you're going to prepare the data that will give you insight. Again, back to your research question. So what we do when we analyze data is that we distill, reduce, we crystallize large quantities of data. Just like when you cook a meal, you peel the potatoes, you marinate the meat or whatever it is that you're doing. You're doing those things. You're getting rid of the stuff that you're not going to eat. It provides clarity and understanding for the stakeholders, whether that's you personally or whether it's your colleagues. You might be taking back your information to the setting that you're doing, and it gives us, part of this is that we're translating and interpreting data. And you need to actually explain all these aspects. You have already investigated the literature, so that's not really part of the analysis, but the literature does inform you what you're going to be on the lookout for. It might inform you in respect to certain themes that you will be searching for. And you're taking it back again later on when you write up your research as part of B, as in course B. You're relating it again, you're actually contributing to the literature then. Okay, I'm going to skip that one. Essentially what we're doing when we're analysing is that we're reviewing the information that you got to make sure that you got the things that you need for your research questions. So that's the first step, if you like. And then you deconstruct and unpack it and construct meaningful accounts. Now this particular slide is looking at it more from a qualitative perspective. But if we look at the next one, it actually applies to whether you're doing a qualitative or a quantitative approach, because you're reviewing to make sure that you've got the key stakeholders, or that you've got some sort of saturation, that you have enough data if it's a qualitative approach. If it's a quantitative approach, you're making sure that you're not missing bits of information, that you haven't got some weird responses that you're not going to be able to use or something. You then unitize it, and we're going to have a go at doing some of these things, sort it into categories, and we might divide that into subcategories where appropriate. That's mainly for a qualitative purpose. And then if we're looking at it again from a qualitative analysis, we're identifying attributes that are themes, if you like, overarching themes that fit in with this. If it's a statistical approach, we're running certain tests and we find the degree that something manifests itself. We're going to start with a qualitative example, and you may well be familiar with this study. I think Heather Ernst has referred to it in one of her maths subjects. It's a famous study by Picker and Berry, and it was investigating pupils' images of mathematicians. You've got the abstract here because it was a research project that had two goals. One was to design and develop a tool with which to investigate pupils images of mathematicians, and the second one was to use that particular device to compare images held by lower secondary pupils in 5 countries. So that was where it was coming from. This is actually leading into your next exercise, because I'm asking you first, what can you tell from this picture? You've got it on your worksheet as well. And I want you to actually nominate themes. Now, I'll make this smaller so I'll show you exactly what yours looks like. Just bear with me. You're on to this one. So you've got the big picture. What do you notice? And I actually want you to come up with some specific examples first. Again, I've just put a generic table in there, but you get the drift. So, for example, if I look at this picture, and there's some absolute corkers of annotated things here. We've got the board-tied eyes, looking around. An old stain, he's too lazy to wash his shirt. So I might go stained clothing, or I might go, you know, unkept appearance. There could be all sorts of things. So I'm actually going to let you just, first of all, jot down what you're finding as examples. So do that, pause this, jot down, take your time to see what you find. Now this is just one picture. Obviously, the people who did this study had a lot of pictures. I mean, they got pictures from 5 countries. So they would have looked first at what kind of things did they notice in these pictures from pure examples before they started emerging themes, kind of combining them into umbrellas, which are the themes. So I'm assuming that you've now done your examples, and then think of what that might be. So for example, if I look at this, the unshaved face, the dirty clothing, dirty hair, unkept appearance, that might be a theme of hygiene. I might look at the fact that this is a guy, so I might look at gender. That could be a theme that would inform me. The themes can be things that just pop out and become common occurrences, or they can be a combination. It can also be things that you know from the literature are key ideas that you're kind of on the lookout for. So if the literature said that students often perceive that mathematicians are men and kind of only interested in one thing, have a pretty limited life, that might be something that you're consciously looking for in the drawings. So just do this as an exercise, and let me just get back to the slides. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Okay, it seems to be working anyway. So presumably this. One of the findings, and again, the findings obviously depend on the research question because it depends on what the examination has been. One of the first findings that Picker and Berry noticed was that the drawings fell into 2 categories. Either students drew what they thought a mathematician would look like, and they were clearly represented as not being a teacher in that case, or there were drawings where the mathematician was clearly a maths teacher. So that was probably something they were looking at in respect to their research question. You might have had a completely different focus, and that's fine because your question would be different. So that's one example. Once you've identified some themes, you interpret how those themes relate or illustrate the question you're exploring, and you're connecting the evidence with the point you're arguing. You also, later on when you write up, you use snippets. In this particular illustration you've just looked at is taken straight from Picker and Berry's study. They obviously didn't draw it, but they put it forward there to illustrate the point they're arguing. And you will do the same thing probably. It might be a quote, or it might be aspects that are raised. It might be, again, a photo or something that illustrates whatever it is that you're finding. This is later on, so you're not doing that interpretation at this point, but you're explaining in your proposal how you will use the data to gain understanding. Next activity is the following. It relates to the initiative, now I've lost the plot, Teach for Australia, which is a program that's been rolled out to recruit partly hard to staff schools with graduates from other disciplines than teaching. So, and it's actually like a fast track program, so that people who sign up for this program become teachers eventually. I think they get somewhat substituted courses. The commonality, though, of those applicants are that they're high achievers within their fields. So it's a way of addressing the teaching profession and making sure that we get really suitable teachers. So what I'm going to want you to do, and obviously I won't check that you're doing this, but I want you to do it in your own time. Go on the video clip first and just watch it. It's about 4 minutes. And you can actually see 3 questions that pop up. It starts off with what the students perceive to be a great teacher, and then gives some more examples. Just watch it fairly indiscriminately. After that, write down something that pops out in your head. Once you've done that, re-watch the clip and actually look for instances of that thing that you've looked for emerging. I also want to point out that even though that's your task, another way of doing this, and this is an approach which would be, just like I said, sometimes in the literature there will be things that you're looking for. You could actually use the AITSL standards, the Australian Institute of School Leadership, and you could look at aspects of, for example, the graduate level, and you could look for elements of those standards that manifest themselves in the clip. So there are actually 2 different ways you could approach it. I don't really care which one you do, but I would start off in a broad sense. You could even do it, all 3. So have a look at it, watch it first fairly open, so you're just paying attention to what's being said, and then view it again. You've got the task sheet. I'm just going to minimize this again so I can see my little task sheet. Here we go. So watch the clip, think about something that stood out. So you've got the task there. You've got the hyperlink as well, which makes your life easier. Rewatch it, and what are you finding? Oh, that should be a capital N, but anyway. After you've done that, I've also got a transcript on Moodle. Highlight relevant passages and use the margin on that script to annotate. In fact, you might even want to use the transcription exercise for the AITSL standards if you want to go down that path to make it richer. So that's your next task. Pause this video as you flick over and have a look. I will continue on. Okay. Now, we said that. We're going to shift the focus a bit, and we're going to shift it to quantitative data. And we're going to do some basic statistics, like some really basic statistics, but that's fine. Some of you are probably a lot more familiar with statistics than I am. That's okay too. So what we're going to do is, as you know, quantitative data is the numerical or statistical information that can enhance a research project. It's often considered less subject to participant impressions because you're seeking to be fairly objective and kind of let the numbers speak for themselves. What we are going to do is look at some of the measurements that are probably quite handy things for you to explore, to test for, if you're going down the quantitative path. And again, these would be things that in your proposal you would say, this is what I would test for to get an understanding. The measures of a central tendency, which gives you an idea of, the average person in that cohort. Mode, median, and mean are those measures, and we're going to look at that. There are also measures of variability. It can be ranks, it can be percentile ranks. So ranks might be how many times, how often something pops up. It can be frequencies, which actually connect with a mode. Anyway, standard deviation is a really important one that you're going to be looking at, and a normal distribution. There's some very basic tests, and they certainly will suffice for what you're doing. So go to the Excel file. I've put it up both separately on the Moodle. Yeah, well, that's where it is actually. It's on Moodle, so download it so you can access it. I'm just going to minimize this first. And the first thing, because I'm going to kind of show you how to do it at the same time. So this could be tricky, but anyway, where is my Excel file? It's gone missing. Okay, I'm just going to open this up. Bear with me. Oh no, here it is. There we go. Sorry about that. I really do hope that this is recording the right screen because I've got two screens I'm working from. Could be interesting. Okay, so what we're going to do, let me just flick to this. We're going to first look at the central tendency in respect to the most frequently occurring score or value, and that's the mode. So this is the stats file, and as you can see, you've got one, if you look at the bottom of this sheet, you've got group A, which is in blue. You click on the other one, you've got group B. So that's the whole idea of having two groups that you compare with. They might be groups that you've observed in the classroom, or they might be different classes or whatever. In this example, I've put pre-test mark. It's the idea that you do a pre-test, post-test because you're comparing. But that could also be that you're looking at the number of minutes someone has stayed on task or the number of times something has manifested itself. I've just put these up as an example. Okay, so we're going to look at mode. So I'm putting my mouse down the bottom of this column, and then I go to, yours might look slightly different depending on which Windows program you've got, but this is the one I've got, so this is what I'm going for. I'm going for statistical because we're doing some basic stats, and it pops up, and I'm going to go to mode, and I'm going for the single mode, and then I'm just going to drag that. Oh, whoops, did that, got a little bit enthusiastic there. Okay, and it should pop up, and it doesn't. Isn't that lovely when things work? Okay, let's just start again. I'm going for mode. Now that's already been popped up because it was one I recently used. I'm going to insert that function, and those are the ones I want included, and then I just press enter and it pops up. So that's my mode. Now if I go to my table, which I've given you a little screenshot of so you know what it looks like. So you can see that you've got the mouse there, you've got the click on the statistical thing, and then you've got all those different tests to run. So mode for pre-test is 11. I'm putting that down. Okay. Then my next one that I'm going to do, I actually just want you to do one, but let's do the post-test one as well. So let's do the mode. Okay, insert function, and off it pops. Okay, 16 is the mode for that. So that's the most frequent. All right, mode 16. Okay. Then what you're going to do, so we've done that one. You're also going to look at the mean. Now, mean sometimes, that's the most useful, and it certainly is really helpful. It's something you're going to need to use. It's the average, which when we call it in statistics, we talk about mean. So you can do it numerically, add them all up and divide them by the number of scores, so you can use Excel, which makes your life easier. If you really want to go fancy pants, you could go SPSS, but that's, I think, going above and beyond, and it's actually unnecessarily complicated. So I'm going again for my statistical thing. I know it pops up there, but I'm just going to show you anyway. Average, and there it comes, and it goes there. So 12.4 for that one. And then you do the post-test. You can certainly, you might want to do all yours on group B just to practice. That's fine. Okay, the next one, and you need to, the reason why you need to write these down is because later on you're going to be looking at an effect size, which is a really common test to show the degree, the strength of a relationship. In fact, if you're looking at John Hattie's really influential book, Visible Learning, it's all effect sizes. He's talking about the size of the effect of various teaching strategies, and that's where it's coming from. The average effect of a teaching strategy is 0.40. So it's just putting it, anyway, I'm going to talk about that shortly, so I won't dwell on that right now. Now I lost count on which slide I'm on. Okay, here we go. Next one, looking at the median. Now, a median, if your data is normally distributed, as it says on this slide, we usually measure the central tendency by mean. But if your data isn't normally distributed, then the median is a better And the median is the point in the distribution above which is kind of in the middle of the whole sequence. If you talked about the size of Russian dolls, it would be the mid one, and you would have equal numbers on either side. So if you've got a group where a lot of people are really quite low, and you've got a few snippets there, to get an understanding of the middle or the median, because it's an infrequent, unusual distribution, it's an indicator of that. So you test that again. So I'll just get rid of that, and let's look at the median. So again, I'm going to my stats. So it's under formulas. I've forgotten to say that, but I'm assuming that you've worked that out. Going to stats, and I'm going to go to median. And there it is, so I can see what it is, and you fill it out. Okay, next one. Standard deviation, really important, because that tells us about how big the gaps are, if you like, in between them, in between the students. So it's actually a really important consideration, and it's an important measure as well for when you use effect size. You probably know maths better than I do, because I'm not a particularly good mathematician, but anyway. So let's look at the standard deviation here. Again, I'm going here to my stats, I'm clicking on it, and you can see, you got rank, you got all sorts of things. Now I'm going for this one. To be perfectly honest, I don't know what the difference is between P and S, but anyway, I'm going for that one because they actually are very similar. And for the basic stuff we're doing, we'll just work the standard deviation. So here we know. Now when you've got a lot of numbers like this, you just round that up to 2 decimals. In fact, I think there's something you can click on to make it just come up in 2 decimals. Anyway, so in this one it will be 2 point, and then that becomes 10 because, oh no, it doesn't. It becomes 2.02 because you're rounding the 1, the second decimal up, to 2 because the following digit is a 9. Okay, and you write that down. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you, which is important, is the effect size. So once you've done all those calculations, and looking again at your sheet, you've written them down. Now you don't have to fill out every single one for both group and group B, but make sure you've got enough for either of them. Now you would do a comparison later on between, this is just an exercise as I said, but you will do a comparison to see if there's an inherent difference between group A and group B, because otherwise you won't know if you can really attribute any differences to your intervention, whatever it was that you were doing. And that's why you need to test them and see if there's a difference between them and what the connections are. So you would have put all those in, and for this test for effect size you're going to need your mean, so that's the average, and the standard deviation. So that's why you need to fill those up before. Now I want you to, I don't care whether you do A or B, but pick one. Okay, let's follow this link, which should work. Open hyperlink. Okay, let me just, here it pops up. So you've got the effect size calculator, and you put in the mean and the standard deviation. Now if you're doing this as a pre-test for group 1 and a post-test for group 2, or if you're doing pre-test for both group 1 and group 2, it doesn't really matter, but you're doing a comparison. And then you write it, you get, you put your digits in, and then you press calculate, and up pops Cohen's D, which is the effect size. Let me just go back to the slides again. In fact, I can make this big now because this is the last slide. So play from current slide. Cohen's D is an indicator. It's a simple standard measurement to indicate the size of the strength of the relationship. Now, a weak one, or a small effect size, is when you get 0.20. This is just so that you're aware of it. So in respect to your proposal, you would say, okay, I will run certain tests. I will, calculate the mean, the standard deviation, and maybe the distribution or the mode and so on. And I will then calculate the effect size of pre-test, post-test, and so on. So a small effect size is 0.20. A median effect size is 0.50, which connects very much to if we're looking at what Hattie's talking about, the average intervention size when it comes to teacher effect, which is actually 0.4, but is not necessarily using Cohen's d, just showing how it fits in. A large effect size in Cohen's d's way of measuring things, which is really common, you often see a big D when you look at studies, is 0.8. So that's it, really. That's as straightforward as it is. Now, do let me know, though, if there are any queries, anything that you've got overarching questions about that I can address. Just simply put it up on the Moodle forum and I'll do it. For the next few weeks while you're out on placements, there are some considerations that you'll be on the lookout, and you can look at the course outline, and I'll just put up little Moodle forums for you that you can contribute to while you're working on it, and I will get your papers back shortly. All right, thanks very much. Just end this.